afternoon. Today is March 28th and I am interviewing Mr. Vaizizi for my career research project. I am researching the career of a professor that teaches English. Mr. Vaizizi, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes.
How is your subject matter related to my career interests of a professor?
To become a professor, you usually need to have a high foundation or a very broad foundation of all the academics. In particular, mathematics is one of the foundations, right? Math, English, science, history, social science, all those subjects you must know in order to become a professor. Mathematics, not so much for an English professor, but to go to most schools, they're going to require that you take at least 1 year of calculus.
How will your class prepare me for my career interests?
Mathematics, in a lot of ways, the structure of mathematics and the structure of English are very similar. In English, you're usually forming an argument or a proposition of some sort. So, for example, they ask you to write about a certain thing or your opinion, or you have to argue some kind of aspect. And usually you have to use certain structures of logic to present your argument. And mathematics is very similar, right? Especially at the higher levels. They were asked you to justify, explain, support. Those are the kind of key words that they would ask you for. And then the structure that you would use to support or explain your mathematical arguments is very similar that you would do in an English class or at a higher level English course.
What makes your class unique in comparison to other classes in Los Angeles?
I teach pre-calculus and AP calculus, and most of the things in that class are usually it's kind of hands-on, and students will typically write some of the answers that they think instead of mathematical language, they write it like in day-to-day speak. So they're able to articulate the concepts and ideas without mathematics. So it's a form of understanding.
Okay. How do you implement character education into your class?
Oh, character education. Well, there's a certain structure in every class. Every teacher has a certain structure and there's certain boundaries. But in my class, I want all the students to be respectable. Respectable to each other, to respect each other. And in particular, the students have to raise their hand. They have to participate, and I expect them to be honest, trustworthy, those kind of traits.
Okay. What are your thoughts on team teaching?
Team teaching, that's interesting. I think team teaching can be very useful. I think if one teacher is allowed to teach and another teacher is allowed to roam the room, or they take turns. Some students may be more adaptable to one teacher or learn better under one teacher than another. So that would be very nice to have two teachers teaching the same topic, because they can also bounce ideas off each other. Like, hey, this works, and the other teacher says, oh no, that works. So I think it gives them a good foundation of, it gives the students are the ones that ultimately win in that, because instead of it being just very one-dimensional, this is how one teacher does it, they get exposed to, you know what, hey, let me ask this other teacher how to do the same thing. Maybe they have a different way of showing me.
So it's like basically like one teacher might be, say for instance, motivational, the other might be too serious, and they might not be able to explain it well.
Yeah, exactly. Like one teacher can maybe explain it in a different way, and then the other teacher explains it in an entirely different way, but the same concept. And so for some students, the first teacher would resonate well, and for some students, yes, the second teacher would resonate really well. And so it would ultimately help both. And maybe for some students, both of them would work really well. They're like, oh, now I have two ways of doing this, rather than just one way. So that's the advantages of team teaching.
How can you help me make it to a higher level in my dream of becoming a professor?
Becoming a professor is very difficult because there's a lot of competition. Part of becoming a professor requires that you write, that you publish papers. Publishing papers is essentially publishing ideas. And And to come up with good ideas usually requires that you have a very broad understanding of all the different disciplines. Um, for example, in mathematics, to become a mathematics professor, what you have to do is come up with something entirely new for your thesis as a PhD, when you're getting your PhD degree. So in order to do that, you have to usually specialize in a particular branch of mathematics and then kind of go up, and you have someone who guides you through that process. But the idea, essentially, is that in order for you to be successful in becoming a professor, you have to really, really work hard. And you have to learn everything. Everything you can, you have to learn. Even if you don't like it, you have to learn it. Because it may come in handy down when you're all the way up there and you're trying to find ideas to write about. You may think, oh, remember I learned this back in high school in chemistry. I can write about this. I can actually do my English thesis on something I learned a long time ago. All that knowledge will come back again.
What does the level and quality of student interaction mean to you?
The quality of student interaction is very important. For example, students that are talking about an academic idea typically understand the idea far better than, of course, two students working alone independently. And if students are talking to each other off topic, of course, they're not going to really learn that well. They may know how to do what is being asked of them, but it won't be internalized as well as two students talking about a topic for a long period of time.
That is all of the questions that I have for you, Mr. Vaizisi. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.